fuck.
Yeah, it's pretty badly good.
Badly good. I would say goodly bad. Although,
Goodly
no,
bad, yeah.
to be fair, it's well made, it's well executed, so it's good,
Mm.
but in a bad kind of way.
But we gotta make our own
That's the
coming
plan.
up.
That's what we're
Coming
going to
up.
be striving for moving forward into the future. But anyway, hello, welcome to the stream. I am Michael, aka MTJ Disorder, joined as ever by the awesome, mighty Phil Rock. Take a
Yes,
bow.
aka Phil Rock. Yes, sir. Metal Mondays.
We got to what's
Episode
it called?
7.
We got to patent that Phil Rock patent trademark.
We gotta. It's already trademarked. Boom.
All right, so we've got an interesting episode for today because we didn't come in with a plan. Well, we came in with a quasi plan, but usually when you're on here, you're going to see us showcasing a band and discussing local music that we've listened to recently and whatnot. But we're changing it up. We wanted to just kind of get a bit more personable, I guess. We're gonna do top hour news as we usually do, but after that, we're gonna get into a discussion about Canadian metal. And exclusively Canadian metal. And that means the scene, the bands, the mainstream, and the not so mainstream. Exactly. But first of all, tell me how's your week been?
Crazy, man. I've been working every single day. I didn't give the boys a day off this weekend because we had some rain last week. So yeah, no days off. It doesn't feel like a Monday. It feels like a second Thursday of a 2 week from hell. Whatever.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I personally find that the whole case of the Mondays thing, it confuses me. I guess back at school as a kid, maybe, but ever since I've been an adult, I've never really operated like weekends are a thing anyway. A day is a day, and you've got hard ones and you've got easy ones. And that's the best way to look at it.
So a lot of work, and I did listen to some metal, but I didn't listen to a million album. I only listened to a dozen, and I'll be talking about this a little later. There's two bands that stand out that I listened this week, but we have a huge week coming next Friday, of course, with the Cannibal Corpse next LP, and we'll be reviewing that one next week. Spoiler alert! I think we already said it in last week's episode, but we'll be reviewing that album next week, so that will be fun. How about you? How was your week?
Busy again, like it always is. Pretty much probably the same sort of week that you have had. However, I was able to work on days when it rained and also when it snowed because we're in Canada, and of course, it snowed again. That being said, you look outside and it's pretty much gone again. It didn't stick around for very long. We got Trevor in the chat, by the way. Yo, Trevor, what's up?
What's up, Trev?
One of these days, he's gonna remember that we don't allow the sound alerts during the show because he always comes in with the sound alert, wasting his channel points. Bless him.
And one day we'll have him on the show too.
Well, we might need more moderators as we move forward here. Actually, I should share this real quickly with you. We have a Discord channel, which is Discord is a chat device. You probably don't use it, I would imagine, but it's there if you want to get into it. It's a good way to be connected with the channel and with the community, and to also be able to speak with viewers. Viewers can send questions and join in on polls and whatnot. And let me just.
I do know it because I play Magic the Gathering with some of my homies.
Oh online. Man, you should stream that.
Yeah, well, actually, my buddy Joey, Joey he was my first drummer, or pretty much the only other drummer I played with, and yeah, he's streaming also. He's on Twitch like you, and but yeah, so I do know Discord. It's cool. You can play some music, have a conversation while you play. It's pretty
the interesting thing though about Magic the Gathering, games like that do very well. Like Hearthstone is another one. Gwent, the Witcher card game. All those kinds of games are amazing.
It's laid back, so you play. You can chat about random shit. It's not like you're fucking stressed, trying to gunning people. Like you're just playing cards and chatting. Yeah.
Which explains quite a lot about the Twitch audience. The Twitch audience just wants to be able to chill.
Yeah.
You go into someone's stream and they're freaking about, going, son of a bitch, every time they die. It probably gets really stressful and they're like, I'm out of here.
Exactly.
That's what's nice about our conversations. This gives, especially my channel on Twitch, it gives us a chance to have some nice, easygoing, relaxed conversation. We don't have a lot of that.
It gives us a chance to catch up, just you and me. Also, it's like we're inviting you to our private talk.
Precisely. I didn't get a chance to listen to anything personally this week myself. I was pretty much just watching podcasts while I was not watching podcasts. Sorry, listening to podcasts whilst I was driving this week. A lot of boring non-metal stuff like debate and discussion and intellectual educational shit. Actually, that's mean of me to say. I'm not suggesting that those metalheads are not intellectual at all, but there is no metal music involved in it. That's what I meant to say, just to clarify.
All right, right. Well, I have a few albums for you. Either I talk about them now, or you want to do the news.
Yeah, let's do the news. I was gonna have a little metal conversation before the news, but there's so much news to get to. I feel like let's get it out of the way. The first thing we're going to talk about is something I generally don't talk about or allow discussion of this nature on my channel, but we're going to get into it to some degree based in context of this story. And this is, of course, I've got this from Metal Injection. Dee Snider calls cancel culture censorship, quote. Now, it's interesting, first of all, to point out that he is essentially comparing cancel culture with censorship. Now, censorship does have a governing body behind it, mind you, like FCC and whatnot. So there is a slight difference, and that was one of my issues with his stance on this. I do agree with him that cancel culture is getting out of control and is it's affecting a lot of what we see in pop culture and in the public eye and in the music scene. So cancel culture can be dangerous because there's so many people who get outraged over just about anything. Things are always going to be running into this. Right. I do agree slightly with him though, in that that music itself should be a free expression and shouldn't be getting cancelled. I mean, what kind of music out there can be taken literally? I don't think it can be. You're not doing anything. It's like Cannibal Corpse are singing about devouring guts and cooking entrails and stuff and whatnot, but it's not like singing about it is doing it.
Right.
I think what Dee Snider used to fight in the 80s was the insinuation from these governing bodies who want to censor everything that people listening to it are impressionable and are going to go and do these things. It's just one more point. In defense of metal music, where is anyone ever 100% listening for the lyrics? There's so much more to it, and that's what the censorship kind of negates and forgets.
Yeah, and that whole court thing with Dee Snider is close to my heart because Frank Zappa is my personal favorite composer of all time, and he, with Dee Snider, defended in court the censorship or against censorship. And if you've never seen Dee Snider take out that shriveled paper of his back jeans pocket and read that like a lawyer, but with his fucking hair, like that's a classic Dee Snider right there. Very posed, very
well, and it's amazing what that did though for the whole appearance and image of that situation. Nobody expected him to come in and speak with the eloquence that he did.
Yeah,
they're all sitting on that bench in their suits and whatnot. These old upstarts who have been in government for their whole lives. They see this guy come walking in with long hair, eyeliner.
Exactly.
And they just say written on a crappy piece of paper. They're obviously immediately thinking this guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, for sure. And to come back to the news, but just to make a segue there, what's funny is that after that,
well, I got the quote. Do you want me to read the quote before we get into that side of it? So this is Dee Snider. Quote, it's censorship. Oh, sorry, in relation to cancel culture. It's censorship, and censorship has changed quite a bit. I mean, you go to when I was in Washington testifying. By the way, it was a bipartisan effort. It was the Democrats and Republicans who were joined together in putting a leash on rock and roll, but it was definitely a conservative attitude. It was a more conservative attitude wanting to censor music. Now, censorship still exists, but it's gone from the right more to the left. We're in this progressive, politically correct, PC world where we have to be careful about what we say and who we offend, and it's a very odd thing. And that's the relevant quote. He continues to go on and talk about his music.
Right. So like Stevie Ray Vaughan says in the chat, TP Gore got all wet.
Yeah.
that was their special little project. Yeah. And anyway, they got their way after that. Well, it went two ways. Now they had to put parental advisory on the CDs. Well, guess what, Tippy? The only fucking CDs I bought were the CDs that had this on it. If it didn't have it, it wasn't good. It wasn't badass. So every record I bought or CD, whatever, it always had it, and that was a way to differentiate. You know,
that's what's so ridiculous and ludicrous, though, about censorship. Like, they call it a parental advisory, okay? But if the parent uses that as a way to influence their judgment on how they're going to raise their child and let what their child sees, then they're allowing essentially other people to tell them how to do it. Now, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with taking advice, but generally, most parents are for the most part well equipped and know how to raise their child as long as they've been doing it well from the get-go. Not to get into a discussion about bad parenting, because it does exist, but most people know what's best for their child. And I the reason I have this opinion is because my parents as a kid would show me and my brothers like movies like The Fog and Event Horizon, and all, like 10 years old, you watch an Event Horizon, because they knew that we were developing the ability to be able to process what we were seeing. Same goes for what you're listening. So all those ratings do is tell the parents that, hey, look, this might not be good for your kid. But at the end of the day, if the parent, like, I would buy my kid a death metal album. I would. As long as I thought it was good. If I thought it sounded like shit, I'd be like, no, you're not allowed. But for the most part, it's just it doesn't do anything. It's meaningless.
No, 100%. And I mean, again, about the music and the lyrics, like you said, like most people that get into metal is for the music. I mean, you never hear someone, I'm really into metal because I love the lyrics. Okay, it's an added thing, but that's not why people listen to metal. And I mean, in these days, in that days, maybe it was different, but obviously we know now that the lyrics are they write whatever they want, and they don't get persecuted by it because it's kind of underground also. But what's become crazy is that some songs winning a Grammy, like WAP, Wet Ass Pussy by fucking Cardi B and whatnot, that plays on the radio, the censored version, but that plays on the fucking radio, and that's what's crazy.
Yeah, they're still going to go find out what the uncensored version's like, regardless of whether or not they're hearing it censored. So essentially, I think this is where Dee Schneider was realistically trying to complain, is like, who does this protect? It doesn't protect anyone.
Oh, wait. Yeah, that's for music. So he did what he did for music, but to say cancel culture is censorship, I mean, it's like linking 2 points that are never met. I know what he means by it.
I know what he means too, but I want to pick it apart on the stream though, just to sort of like put my 2 cents on it, because there's more of the quote here I'd actually like to read. He goes on to say, I've been working on lyrics for my new album, Leave a Scar, which comes out in July, so shameless plug right off the bat. And I found myself questioning the metaphors I was using. I mean, there is art. Where is art without metaphor? Where is lyrics and writing without metaphor? Yet I was going, can I say this? Can I say this? I have a song called In for the Kill. That's where I agree with him. I agree with him there. Is like, that's what cancel culture does instead of... So in the same vein that parental advisories and censorship doesn't change anything, doesn't help anyone in any way, the modern day cancel culture also doesn't help anyone. It only serves to hinder. It only serves to slow down a young child's ability to comprehend or be in touch and in contact with the things they need to make judgments on. It doesn't,
I agree.
And then it hinders the music, as he's saying, what is art without metaphor? And I agree with him on that. He loses me when he brings the political left and right into it. That's what kind of confused me. Says censorship still exists, but it's gone from more right to the more left, where we have political correctness, he's still kind of wrong, because cancel culture exists outside of a governing body. Cancel culture is the culture itself. It's the willingness for the people who are eating this stuff, the people who are buying this stuff, to cancel and censor for themselves. That's what cancel culture is. Censorship has a governing body behind it. So for him to make this a thing about left and right, to me, doesn't make any sense. You've got douchebags on the left who are going to get infuriated and what's the word? Insulted over nothing, insulted over sliced bread, and then but you're also going to have idiots on the right who are trying to dictate how we should enjoy something and what we should be allowed to see. So I think he loses me there, but he managed to pull it back around though when he said it stifles the art, and it stifles a person's ability to gain anything from the art.
And since he did so much since he tried to do so much for censorship, it's normal that people ask it. And the best part about this news is learning that he's putting out a new album.
Yes,
which we'll check it out for sure.
What did he say? It's called Leave a Scar. Yeah, and that's a solo project. He obviously doesn't work with Twisted Sister anymore. All right, moving on. We got a quick piece of news here. Something, because to me it's not really news. It was posted today. Kirk Hammett, he was able to sell his guitar that was used in the music video for $1, and he sells it for over $100,000. And the first thing I thought when I read that article was, that's it?
Yeah, same. Like, what is that news? Like 100,000.
But I also expected more.
Yeah, it's pretty lame. Like, especially when you learn. Okay, when you look at the top 10 guitars sold, of course, one was for $250,000 30 years ago. Frank Zappa bought Jimi Hendrix's a guitar that he put a flame, at Woodstock, and he rebuilt it and played it. But the top 7 out of the 10 guitars are Eric Clapton guitars. And they sold for millions, but yet the biggest rock metal band ever, classic video one. We all know what the guitar looks like. 100,000. Either it wasn't well announced, or nobody gives a shit about the Metallica guitar. I don't know.
You know what though? To me, it's the most Metallica thing ever. Because Metallica are essentially now known as victims of their own success. Ultimately.
Yeah, true.
Because they are, as you say, one of the greatest rock/metal bands of all time. But they've been in that spotlight for so long that they've been memed essentially by half of the public.
It's by greatest, sorry, I just gotta precise. By greatest, I didn't mean factually the greatest. I mean the most famous, the one that sold the most or whatever. The most famous. Yeah.
There's a good way to gauge though whether or not they are. You ask someone who doesn't know anything about metal to name a metal band, and they'll tell you Metallica. Right. So they are one of the top bands of all time, but I still think they're because of their success, they're equal victims to it as they are success to it, and this comes from a lot of the shit that they've done whilst in the spotlight, from the Napster fiasco to the simple fact that Lars Ulrich is just considered not one of the greatest metal drummers of all time. Yeah. Kirk Hammett suffers the same thing too. Kirk Hammett gets made fun of left, right, and center. All the jokes about the wah pedal and whatnot. The fact that ever since they lost Cliff, rest in peace, that they've gone from bass player to bass player. There's so much to be memed about them that it's I think one of the reasons why there's not people literally lining up out the door to buy this guitar.
Well, it proves that Metallica guitars are not a collector's item. It's what it proves to me.
Yeah,
it just proves to me that
except a show is a hot ticket. To go see them in a big stadium is people would pay through the roof to go see it. It's very interesting contrast, I think, with their popularity.
Yeah. Whereas, like I mentioned, Eric Clapton guitars is a collector's item. It looks like, we cannot compare the influence that Eric Clapton had versus Kirk Hammett. Obviously, he's a god to a lot more guitarists than Kirk Hammett is, but Kirk Hammett being so iconic still in the metal rock world. I also would think that it would sell for at least $1 million. So that's pretty lame.
Let's put it this way: if I was a millionaire, I would have paid more than 100,000 for it. Although, would I?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'd want to be trying to track down something else. I'd want like a played Dave Murray guitar or something, one that was played on stage at a live show, something like that. My interest level for a Kirk Hammett guitar is very low.
Yeah, exactly. Steve Bob, a great comment there. Metallica, the first to cross over. It means obviously the first metal band to become popular, quote unquote. I mean, to become radio, to be a play on the radio, and being stadium. And I know what he means by that.
I guess I wouldn't really consider Iron Maiden or Black Sabbath, I guess, because they were in a time where all this was still relatively new. People were experiencing it. By the time Metallica came out, there was already, speaking of censorship, probably a group of disgruntled parents who were already, no one's allowed to listen to this thrash, it's trash, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And they were able to successfully get themselves out of that typecast and into the mainstream rock and roll scene.
Exactly. And we're talking MTV. I mean, it was around that time also, the videos and all that shit. So, for sure.
You would have had Iron Maiden, though, music videos on MTV at the time.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
But I'm not sure if that just means more about the genre or the success level of those bands.
Yeah, the success probably.
Because Iron Maiden was successful in that genre in a time when not very many of those bands existed.
Mm-hmm.
What would you have had at the time? Deep Purple and Blue Oyster Cult, stuff like that.
Yeah, although I feel like
Queen.
Metallica, because it appealed to all the generations, where Iron Maiden now does too, but maybe at the time didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like more kids listening to metal before, maybe it was more of a grown-up thing, quote unquote.
Anyway, Kirk Hammett's guitar and music video for one just didn't sell for very much. Yeah, whatever.
Next.
All right, so Gojira dropped a new song today, a new single, and I've listened to it a few times, and I don't know. I don't. At the risk of sounding underwhelmed, I just want to be like, "Hey, it's Gojira. It's just good. It's good Gojira. Nothing more I can say about it."
No, I agree. It's good Gojira, and we were discussing a little bit before the show. Gojira is this kind of band where huge respect. I never heard a bad Gojira song. I never heard a bad Gojira album. Never seen a bad Gojira performance, but they don't hook me. They don't like. I couldn't understand someone who would say Gojira is my favorite band. Like, to me, I don't want to say something too underwhelming, but there's missing something there for me to be able to be like, they're amazing.
Could I ask a question for clarification here?
Yeah.
Have you listened to the album The Link by Gojira?
I've listened to them all, but some only once, just out of curiosity, so I couldn't really.
So to me, their album The Link is probably the most progressive. Yeah, it's probably the most progressive album. Ironically enough, in my opinion, the catchiest. It's almost like being in a trance listening to that album. But they never really replicated the stuff from that album.
2003. I might have not listened to it. I think I listened to. No, I started listening to From Mars to Sirius, the next one, 2005.
Yeah, you wanna check out The Link. I don't know why they stopped making music that way. This is my 2 cents on the generic nature of them as a band. Is that they're again in a way victims of their own success. I think they were making that style of music in a time when it wasn't really that popular. You go listen to that album and you can almost say maybe 50% of it isn't really a metal album. It's like it's very much more closer to Tool and whatnot. But I think moving forward they realized, hey, look, we've got a sound, we've got a style, and we're not going to compromise ourselves.
I mean, that's what I think is very interesting about Gojira is they really are in a special place, like in a unique, place. The way the metal and for people who not so familiar about with Gojira, I would say they're a mix of prog death and groove. metal. So it's two styles that not many bands mix. The only other one I can think of is like Ginger. For example, I'm Ginger is more brutal, is more a little more death and complex on the riffs.
You don't think Periphery?
Periphery is progressive metalcore, so it's metalcore but proggy. So it's,
there's a lot of groovy stuff in there though, because they're also kind
100%.
of a genty band as well. Okay,
they have a lot of stuff. Great band, by the way. I love Periphery.
What about Meshuggah?
Okay, Meshuggah would be closer to Gujira in the sense that they have these moods, the atmosphere, right?
Yeah.
They, like you said, they coast on a wave, and I love bands like that. But to me, Meshuggah is a much more interesting band for me. But what's cool about Gujira is that when they do so the latest single, that riff when they start on the the triplets and stuff, like that's the groove riff. That's the groove riff, and then they have the prog segments. So they always have their hook are the groovy riffs, and the rest of the music is proggy. But they blend it in a way that I think is interesting. But for me, if I want groove, I will listen to Pantera, and if I want prog death, I will listen to Opeth. So the two together is tickles my ear a little bit. The same way in metalcore, where bad metalcore, like it was verses with super growl vocals, and then chorus with 4 chords that sounded like a pop song with some clean vocals, like scotch taped together. Like I hated that trend. But Periphery, brilliant band. They mix cleans and growls. I think for me, they're one of the only metalcore band that I like, and the prog bits of their music is what keeps me hooked. It's very interesting. The last album, Stan, amazing album. I really liked it.
Bob just said again, might have something to do with France always enjoying jazz. Metal scene in France is very respectable. Yeah. So I think I have a similar viewpoint as you, but just a different way of describing it. To me, it's just like that song, for instance. I've forgotten the name of it already. I've got it up here. Hold on.
In the Storm or something.
Yeah, Into the Storm. Okay, and there you go. The song itself is as memorable as the title.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's also as predictable as the title, right? I feel like listening to that song, that could have been on Off the Whales album. I could have just finished listening to Ouroboros, and then that started playing. I think there's nothing new comes from them. They're so like stressed on making sure it sounds like the sound they captured, the thing they made. They've stagnated. But that's not a bad thing. We've had this discussion, I think, before on the podcast, that stagnation in music isn't inherently a bad thing. For some bands it works, and for some bands it doesn't. So
you made me realize when you were saying that Into the Storm. So the storm is the groove riff, and the into part, and the before and after the storm is the prog part. But really, that's like the third or fourth single of the upcoming album, and there's nothing crazy new there. But
I want to play a little game with you. I want to play a game. Are you down?
Oof. Yes.
I gotta get some tabs up here. Hold on.
Tabs.
Yeah, not like some. No, not guitar tabs. Sorry, like internet tabs. So I'm just trying to think of a band. Hold on. Here we go. I already mentioned them. Right. So this is the game. This is how we're gonna play. So I'm gonna read you a song title, and I want you to tell me if you can guess whether it's a Gojira song title or if it's not.
Oh, fuck! I will suck because I don't know them so much.
Okay. This is, but still, think about Into the Storm. All right.
Okay.
Here's the first song. The Shooting Star.
I think it is.
It is. All right. The Art of Dying.
It is.
It is, yes. Okay. Dominance and Submission.
No.
No. Okay, good. You're 3 for 3 right now.
It sounds too complicated.
Like okay.
It's not nondescript enough.
Okay, well, let's see if I can try and throw you a curveball here then. Obviously shouldn't tell you that. Um, ooh, this one's a tough one. Black Blades.
No,
It
it's
isn't.
not.
Okay.
Wow, it's
4
100%,
for 4.
baby.
All right, we'll do 2 more. See if you can be. Well, no, we'll do best of 7. All right. Too Serious.
It's from Mars to Sirius.
No, Too
Isn't it?
Serious. Well, okay.
Just to Sirius?
You've guessed it right. Obviously, the album is from Mars to Sirius. Yeah.
Uh,
So you guessed it correctly. What can we do for another one here? The Vigil.
I want to say yes.
No.
Fuck.
The Vigil from the album Mirrors by Blue Oyster Cult. All right. Well, there you go. Though you did what, 5 of 6. So you understand the point I'm trying to make, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And one thing before we move on, I want to say I like what I like about Gujira. Like I said, they're in a good place for everything. Like in the music, they're unique. Even in their message, they're one of the only bands from what I can tell that they really push a cause. For people who don't know, they are very good for environmental protection, but they don't do it in a cringe way, right?
Yeah.
I think like they don't support like crazy extreme things. They just talk like casually about saving the environment, I think, but in a badass way, you know what I mean? Like they're not obnoxious about it, and I think that's another thing that makes them quite unique. And also their appearance, like they don't look like anything. They're as bland as their song titles. They don't look like they don't have no gimmick of in appearance. So they're like that real band, right?
I think that's indicative of their awareness.
Yeah.
And they are very smart. Funnily enough, I made the joke about metalheads not being intellectual. They're a very intellectual band. I'm pretty sure they all have degrees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. Would make sense.
So they're pretty smart and pretty self-aware group, and they might have even used math to figure out how to create the perfect niche for themselves.
The perfect song.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the last article right here, which is it's old news, but it came out after last week's episode. And I'm going to let you take care of this one. So, Lordi to release 7 new studio albums in October. It's almost as ridiculous as they are as a band.
Yeah, so I think I only heard 2 Lordi songs in my life, and one of them was a video, and so they look like Gwar. Correct me if I'm wrong. They have all these costumes, but they make sort of like power metal kind of.
Yeah, they're not as crazy as Gwar, but that's like a fine line, though.
But 7 albums, so that's not a joke. And
No.
I read the article, and they were saying the singer was explaining. I think he's the singer was explaining that he wanted to put out 10 albums, and the record company said, "Are you fucking crazy? Not 10, but we'll do 7." And he was like, "Okay, 7 sounds good." So 7 albums.
Mm-hmm.
How the hell, like?
Well, I got the article here. Do you want me to paraphrase a few things here?
Yeah.
So the Finnish heavy metal monsters Lordi will release no less than 7 new studio albums in October. The LPs will mark the first new music from Lordi since the arrival of 2020's collection, so not very long ago. A fictional compilation album which contains songs that Lordi would have written had the band existed between the early 1970s and the mid 1990s. So that's kind of a cool concept in of itself, and that's something they've already done. Now, with this article doesn't mention the 7 albums though. There's obviously not very much of a plan, but you can use that example as something as to know what to expect from this group. Yeah, a fictional compilation album. How does that even work? Album from a fictional back catalogue that doesn't exist. I got the idea that... This is his quote. I got the idea that the only thing that could top that is to record and release the fictional back... Oh, okay. So the fictional back catalogue is in the is in the album collection, and the new 7 unreleased albums are going to be that fictional album that they're talking about. So it's like Inception.
Yes.
Albumception.
Uh-huh.
That's
But
insane.
to me, the crazy part is the logistics. Like, did they write that many songs, or are they writing that many songs for that, or like what the fuck is going on in their minds?
There's no explanation in the article about
Yeah,
that.
I know. So that's kind of a mystery, and as a marketing thing, I think it's kind of brilliant. But it's just doesn't make sense. Like, how do you put out 7 albums?
Well, listen to this quote. Listen, what kind of douchebag says this? What other rock band has done this before? The answer is no other. That's a direct quote.
True.
Still, though.
True. It's cocky. No, I kind of dig it. And for me, I'm interested. I'm super interested. I haven't listened to Lordi in 15 years. Well, I haven't heard of Lordi songs in 15 years, and I will be digging into those albums. I'm too curious.
You say something like that though to the media, to the press, you better fucking deliver on that, right?
Steve Bob says same song, different keys. Here you go.
Hey, there's nothing really that wrong with that. You can find a way to use the same, like, different keys to change things up.
But then you plagiarize yourself. How does that work?
Yeah, sort of. You could do the AC/DC approach, where it's not the it's the different. It's same song, different chords.
Yeah, exactly.
With
which is why I don't know if that happened to you, but sometimes when you try to recall some B or C songs from AC/DC, and by ear, and you end up mixing 2 or 3 of their songs.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, oh no, that's from another song, because it gets repetitive, but AC/DC is still my favorite band in the world, so fuck y'all if you don't like it. Next.
Yeah, that rounds off the news for this week. I'm done talking about Lordi after that statement. You know what though?
Oh.
Like I think when you shared that in our band's group chat, I think I pointed out like, oh, how can you like these guys but not like Ghost?
So, right, no, so yeah.
In defense of Ghost though, he's so Tobias Forge, the mastermind behind Ghost, he delivers. It may not be your cup of tea, but whenever he does the things he does in public eye, like, in my opinion, if you're gonna say what that guy said, you better deliver with the goods and make good music. It's the same thing applies for Ghost, but it's more imagery. It's like, if you're gonna pretend to be like this cardinal of Satanism and whatnot and do all of this crazy show, you better deliver with not only the show but the good music. And I think for Ghost fans, he very much delivers on that.
Yeah, and my answer to you was I don't love Lordi and I don't love Ghost, but I just thought that was a funny piece of news.
Oh yeah,
so.
That was more of an indictment on Lordi though. I was just using that as an example to show that bands can be cocky like that and they can deliver with it. But when you get like that and you get super cocky, you're putting yourself under a lot of pressure. Oddly enough, Gojira, we were just talking about, Gojira are the opposite, right? They're not cocky. They just do what they do.
But I feel like Lordi would have nothing to lose, because I haven't heard of them in 15 years, and like that's just gonna give him a little PR boost or whatever.
Lordi are like Gwar in the sense that because of the imagery and what they do, they're gonna have fans.
Yeah.
They're gonna have people who will support them. I think Kiss is the same as well. I know I'm gonna have a lot of Kiss fans freak out at me saying, "Oh no, Kiss is for the music," and I'm like, "Yeah, don't get me wrong, I like Kiss's music, but a lot of people were attracted to their image, not their music."
Yeah. Moving on.
Interesting tidbit though about Kiss, just real quick, is that they not anymore, but if you actually look at albums released, they spent more time unmasked without the makeup than they did. It's only since their resurgence in the new millennium with the new lineup and whatnot that now that's not the situation anymore. But before they got back together, back with the original Ace Frehley and Peter Criss lineup, there was a huge period of like 18 years, I think, when most of their music videos and their tours were done without the makeup.
Yeah, no, for sure. Time flies, and actually, it reminds me of another fact about a band we'll be talking shortly. Is the latest singer of Cryptopsy has been with them for a lot more time than Lord Worm, for example, or previous singer, which it's hard to grasp that. Or even if you just consider, like Jimi Hendrix recorded for 3 years. But you know what I'm getting at, like
something that hits home for you would be AC/DC, I would imagine.
Yeah, I know for sure. Bon Scott 6 years, right? Or 76 to 80. 73 to 80, 7 years.
Either way,
6, 7 years.
Brian Johnson has been with them way longer.
Yeah,
Heck,
like 40 years longer.
I'm pretty sure the bass player, Cliff, what's his name?
Williams.
Cliff Williams, that's it. He was with the band longer than the original bass player.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Yeah, because that was still technically news we were talking about right there. So this is where we would usually showcase a local Canadian act that we want to help promote and get their message out to the viewers. But instead, we're going to sort of discuss Canadian metal nationally as a whole, what it means to us, how it works. If anybody out there is interested and hasn't heard any Canadian metal, we'll have suggestions, a lot of suggestions actually.
Well, we're still showcasing because we'll showcase old bands, new bands, A, B, C bands.
Well, yes, so, some of the ones I'm going to be discussing aren't even together anymore. So
we're just kind of switching it up a bit. And I think, if you allow me, I think a good place to start would be first, how did you get into metal?
Me personally?
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, it's an interesting story because I got into metal before I got into playing any instruments. I guess piano doesn't really count because I was only playing one-handed at school. But I knew at that point that I was able to play an instrument, and it took me 5 years to convince my parents to actually finally get me one. So I was a late bloomer. I didn't start playing guitar technically until I was 15, because I got my first guitar back home in England when I was 12, and came to Canada like a year later, and it's not the type of thing you usually would pay to have brought over instantly when a family's moving from one country to another. And it just never made its way over here. So at the time though, I would have been, me and my cousin were kind of like, people called us moshers. That's what we were called, even though I'd never been in a mosh pit in my life. But wearing baggy hoodies and trap pants and whatnot, big into bands like Slipknot. Slipknot would be the first example of an extremer style of metal that I listened to, because prior to that, the only metal I really would have known would have been Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, all the old stuff from late 70s, early 80s.
From UK.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Judas Priest, that sort of stuff. Now, my cousin was the one who got me into Slipknot, and after that, though, that was it. I kind of went off and experimented with more new metal bands, but like bands like I had Limp Bizkit, one of the Limp Bizkit albums. I listened to Linkin Park.
I was big into new metal,
Papa Roach, and all that. But that's the thing. I got there from Slipknot though, because that's what people were calling the genre of that Slipknot was in. But there was something different though that wasn't quite tickling my itch.
Yeah.
And all the kids at school, all the cool kids at school, listened to like Linkin Park and stuff, and I still wouldn't get any recognition from those kids, even though I was listening to that stuff. So I was like, well, fuck you, I'm going to go try to find more extreme stuff. And that's when I found Pantera.
Oh, yes.
Pantera would be my next band. And the interesting thing is I didn't know they were an American band. I didn't know anything about them. All I knew was that album, the Cowboys from Hell. That's all I knew from them. I should have known at the time, but this is 11, 12 years old. What do you know? Cowboys from Hell. I should have known they were an American band. So it wasn't until I finally came over to Canada, eventually got my guitar brought over here and started playing guitar, but that's another story for another time. I would have now started getting more into a little bit more mainstream North American metal, because we have a radio station here called The Bear, who think they play metal. They play all of the above. They play like Linkin Park and stuff, but they also will play Metallica. They'll play Megadeth. This is where I started learning more about the thrash scene. I started listening to bands like Sepultura, Death Angel, Annihilator, Exodus, Creator.
Well, we're getting there. Yeah. So obviously the next question is, so what's the first Canadian metal band that blew your mind and you're like, holy fuck,
the first Canadian metal band that blew my mind?
Yeah. You just mentioned Annihilator. I don't know.
Well, I'm wondering if it is them, but only by proxy that they were a thrash band. So I would have known about them at the time. I wouldn't have known they were Canadian at the time, mind you.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
So then you could probably say Annihilator then.
Okay. Cool.
Like,
and you say
Neverland.
Okay, I don't really know them that much. I can. People want to crucify me for that in Canada, only because for me, trash was it's like Slayer, Metallica, and that's all I listened to for as far as metal for my first years. Well, I started younger than you, getting into metal. Like I was 10 years old,
Yes, Trevor,
uh,
Annihilator.
and for me, I already said that story, but the first time I saw titties was at the Metallica show, and that's what changed. That changed my life, and I picked up the guitar. And Metallica, Slayer were like my first thing, and then new metal when I was 14 years old.
There was an extra
Yeah.
dimension to my story.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to segue just because I brought up Annihilator, because
Uh-huh.
I've also told you guys this with Alexi Lejo's passing, but
Uh-huh.
I didn't get into more extreme stuff like death
Mm.
metal. I didn't start listening to like a lot of death metal until I saw the Gigantor in 2006. I think it's
Okay.
2006 or 2007, and Children of Bodom were there, and they were the opening band, and they played Living Dead Beat, and it starts out with like the lights are low, you got pulsating red lights with smoke everywhere, and like all this like dry ice on the floor and whatnot, and then just dun 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 bum bum bum, all these synths start kicking in, and I was like, what the hell is this? I didn't
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that death metal could have that melodic quality to it.
Uh-huh.
I was
Right,
afraid of
right.
death metal, just probably the same way you
Mm.
were. I was afraid of it because it was exclusively associated with like all this dark imagery and all this evil shit, which is silly because I was watching movies like Event Horizon, so it should have been right up my street. But
Mm-hmm.
so that's when I finally broke that wall down, though, and decided to start listening to bands that have the heavier elements, blast beats,
Right.
shredding. Well, the shredding metal, I guess in death, in thrash metal, but more complicated, more intricate riffs, screaming vocals, that sort of stuff, and that's the end of my metal story.
Ah, okay. Now, because I was wondering if we were going to do the childhood and then go on to more Canadian bands. Because for me, it's weaved in and out, meaning that you understand what I mean. So I started trash. That's thrash. That's all I listened to in metal. That's all I knew. I knew Metallica. I
How
knew
did you discover it,
Slayer.
though?
So yeah, Metallica, 10 years old. My dad had some a box, the box at the arena had some box tickets for Metallica. He as part of the company he was working for, and he brought me to Metallica. Imagine I was 10 years old. I lost my shit, and I started playing the guitar the next day. So all the Metallica. I was already listening to punk rock and grunge, like Nirvana and Offspring, Green Day technically were like my first, AC/DC were like my first bands, but metal, Metallica for sure. And after that, when I discovered, after that, you start wanting to listening to more extremes, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. You
so after that,
graduate. You graduate through different
yeah,
levels of extreme.
so after that, when I got to know Slayer, yeah, I really lost my shit. Like it was so different from Metallica. It was so much darker. It was so much scarier, And the videos, the VHS, I had bought the VHS, and you see their fans like carving Slayer in their arms, yeah. And I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do in my life. I didn't yet, but yeah, that Slayer really activated something in me that I wanted to look for more extremes. And in 1997, so then I would have been 11 years old at camp. Some I don't know what you call these the people that take care of the kids there. What's the word at
Uh,
camp?
Guidance counselors. I don't know.
Les moniteurs en français.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
whatever. And he played Anonymous, the album Stress, in 1997, and it was thrash. Anonymous, if you've never heard of them, is thrash. They're still active. It's a great Quebec. Obviously, I grew up in Quebec, so most of the Canadian bands in my upbringing were from Quebec. And yeah, so Anonymous, that album Stress really shook me there. I couldn't believe that because I was Metallica and Slayer was so my idols. Then when I heard that band, I was like, oh shit, there's people doing that here. Then I started to dig for more bands. You know what I mean? A little bit like you. I started to see a different kind of world. And
Well, just to
yeah,
interject real
go
quick,
ahead.
I found
Yeah.
a lot of bands from other people.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, always suggested to me. I usually have a hard time finding my own because I'm
Right.
very bad at searching like that. I don't know really.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what I want until I hear it, right?
Uh-huh.
So that's why a lot of what I picked up as I went when I graduated through the different levels of metal, it was usually someone else had suggested it to me, like a bandmate or a friend or a cousin. You know, it usually was suggested to me.
It's same for me in those years, because I could have said that, because the first time I heard Slayer and Sepultura was an older brother of one of my friends. You know, the older brother with the long hair and the Satan posters in his room, the
Yeah.
cool old brother. Yeah, that's the first time I heard Slayer and Sepultura. And Anonymous, I was telling you, was one of the monitor at camp who played that. And because in those days, like, we didn't go deep in the internet finding new bands. And then in high school, that's when everything changed. I had never heard of death metal before. I didn't know death metal existed. And another older brother of a friend made a rip
Such a great
CD,
influence.
yeah, of Cryptopsy. And I couldn't fucking believe it. Like, how it's so different. Like, from, you take thrash and you listen to Cryptopsy, and like None So Vile. None So Vile is what, 94? Okay.
93,
And
94ish, yeah. Actually, let me get
94,
this stuff up so that we know for
I think
sure.
it's 94. It's so extreme compared to thrash, and I couldn't, but it's like you take 10 steps, right? It's like everything is
Wait,
twice
hold on.
is
We were both way off. 96.
96, 96. But okay, so the thrash album I'm talking about Anonymous was 97. So I didn't know, but even predating that,
Oh yeah, you come
obviously now,
across things after the fact, right?
yeah, of course, now we know that death metal existed in the 80s, in the mid 80s, but to me,
Heck,
I had never heard it.
yeah. I mean, for me, when it comes to my death love, he was already long gone, long dead
Yeah,
before I even discovered death. So it
right.
happens.
And I just couldn't believe the level, the step that you did, the difference. So yeah, Cryptopsy for me was the first Canadian band that really shook me, was Cryptopsy. But I didn't, even that was in 2000. Like, I didn't. Yeah, that was in 2000.
That's why I
Might be.
wanted. That's why I wanted to continue my story because the first metal
Uh,
band that shook me, that was Canadian, and I knew they were Canadian, was Cataclysm.
Right, but that's what I was hoping you would plug as in your story. That's
Yeah,
why I
yeah.
wrote my story. Otherwise, I couldn't tell it correctly
Oh, I see. Okay, I see.
with the years, right? No, but go ahead. The Cataclysm, Quebec, another Quebec band.
Okay, so Cataclysm came recommended to me by bandmates I was in at the time, and
Mhm.
everyone's like, "Oh man, you if you like Death and you like Cannibal Corpse and all this sort of stuff, I mean, you got to check out. Oh, you like Dying Fetus? Yeah, you got to check out Cataclysm." And I'd never heard of them, and they were like, I'll name drop bass player Jordan. He had tickets to a
Wow.
show they were playing that week here in town. And
Uh-huh.
he said, "Look, yeah, I've got a spare ticket. I paid $25 for it. You can have it for 10." I had it for 10. I went out and watched that show. I had the fucking time of my life.
Wow. I never saw Cataclysm live. It must have been great
Oh,
for
and it
full
was
of
in a very
no.
small venue. It was really up close. It was what do you call it? Starlight Room.
Starlight, the temple
And then I
side.
saw them again with the same bandmates who weren't actually my bandmates at the time because they'd kicked me out. But I saw them again at Pawn Shop, which was even closer. The stage was even lower.
Wow. I never saw them myself.
They're a good show.
Yeah.
They're one of those bands who realize that as a power trio, they really need to like emphasize not power trio, sorry, but you know, like with only the three actual instruments,
Yeah.
they need to amp up the energy by amping up their performance, their stage presence.
Cool. And yeah, so yeah, around the 2000s,
Yes, Trevor, you
and
were there.
and then what happened is that again, I wasn't digging for bands. I just came across as I came across. And at my dad's house, we had Much Loud, the channel Much Loud. So then a few other bands I discovered by watching that channel, which it's Canadian. They were, I think, more than 50% of what they played was Canadian. I didn't even know until later, but they were still local bands, so Quebec and Ontario bands. Then I discovered, there was Alexis on Fire, which is not technically metal, but it's post-hardcore. It still growls, and screams. and Protest the Hero, which is another kind of progressive metalcore band. You know, and
Beyond
I got
Creation?
yeah, later.
Later? Okay.
That's recently, yeah.
Oh, so yeah, we're
And
talking.
yeah,
When was this?
yeah.
Sorry.
Now I'm in the now I'm at 2002,
Oh,
around
okay.
2002. I'm
And you
working
really
at
went in
when
depth for this. You got a whole timeline and everything.
yeah, it took me a big 10
Hey,
minutes.
no,
I googled.
it shows you care, man. That viewers like seeing that level of attention to detail.
So yeah, and but still, I spoke to you now already about like almost 10 years, and it's only 4 or 5 bands. So my point I'm going to make is that in the first in the it only until recently I started to discover a lot of Canadian bands because of communities,
Yeah.
because of internet communities. Then the
Well,
people
does
recommend
that
you.
set me up?
Yeah,
Does that set me up to describe my little before you move on to those? Or I could even set it up for each different tier of music that we have.
yeah.
Because I had this idea that we discussed prior to the show about the Canadian music scene, having been and seen music in the States, seen music back home in Europe. I can say the interesting thing about Canadian music scene in general, not just metal music, is it's very isolated.
Right.
Like
Oh yeah.
we're almost on an island of music here, which is
Mm-hmm.
ironic because the country is massive. You look on the map, you see, oh my god, this huge country, Canada, but a teeny little population, and they're all scattered around. Our city,
Right.
for instance, in order to go to another city to watch another show in a different city, you have to travel like 4 hours, 5 hours, just to.
Right.
So that affects the fans and the viewers of this music as much as it does the bands themselves. Like it's only just recently with the modern era and the internet that connectivity has allowed the Canadian music scene to start to spread out into the mainstream.
Right.
And so we have different categories. I think probably best to start with that top category. And I'll let you get back on with your story. And the top category is obviously mainstream metal bands. And you probably got a couple in your list there, right?
Well, for me, yeah. I mean, I wrote this story just so that I don't forget any important Canadian band. Doesn't matter if I tell a story or not. But since we move on, like for me, is the big four of Quebec metal. The big four that smashed everything. The first one, Stevie Ray Vaughan just mentioned it, is Voivod. So Voivod took thrash and put progressive elements and shook everything, and even people like Chuck Schuldiner from Death and Voivod has always been at the top, the A list of metal bands in Canada, and of course in Quebec. So Voivod was our in Quebec was our first big metal band. The second one
do we owe that to just their presence in Canada, or have they played across and overseas and whatnot?
Yeah, they played everywhere,
Okay.
and because their style, and they came from very remote. Very remote in Quebec, meaning that they were like from, I think they're from Saguenay, they're from so they're like 7-8 hours north of Montreal, So they come from a kind of a remote place, and the fact that they got attention from Metallica, from Death, from all these super known bands, that was the first big metal band in Quebec. So for me in Canada, Cryptopsy then and Gorguts together created the technical death metal style. Like literally, they invented it. So that's number 2 and 3. Gorguts, Luc Lemay, obviously fucking legend in Quebec. He's our Chuck Schuldiner.
Trevor points out in the chat there that Jason Newsted played with Voivod.
Yes, and I saw him played with Voivod. I saw Voivod with Jason Houston, and that was he played double set that night. He played also with Ozzy.
Oh.
That was a crazy show. Yeah, he played with Ozzy. That was a great show. And yeah, so number 2, 3, technical death metal, Cryptopsy, Gorguts, and then the number 4 is Despised Icon, the creators of deathcore. And I saw them in Edmonton for the first time. And that was after, so they broke up. For people who don't know, they came back and they started touring a bunch. And I saw them with Trevor also in Edmonton, and I got to chat with them, and in French, obviously. And I told them, you know what's crazy? I'm from Quebec. I never saw you there, but I see you here now. And tomorrow I'm leaving for Suriname. So so they were, what the fuck you doing there? So I had a nice chat with the boys. And so yeah, for me the big four is always going to be these four, for the styles they created, and for pride, Canadian. I mean, as far as metal is concerned,
There's
these four bands are
there's a
loved.
couple of others here as well who
Yeah.
are listed on Wikipedia. Cataclysm are considered mainstream, which
Mhm.
I would have thought Cataclysm would have fallen under my second tier, which we'll get into next. But
But they're international.
yeah, well, but I also think the second tier though are international bands, because I mean,
Okay.
to me, it's whether or not like you can go into a bar in Spain and be like, yeah, you ever heard of Cataclysm, and no one knows who they are. I'm not saying like a world renowned name or anything, but if
Right.
I would expect there to be fans worldwide as well as just them playing worldwide. But
But I
this
couldn't I couldn't wait to contest you on this because I know Cataclysm is top tier.
there's a couple more though on here that I wouldn't have expected. Augury.
Yeah, but again, a Quebec dude, and a fun story. I mean, funny story. He's got arthritis, so he plays with 5 millimeter picks.
Oh shit! It's like the
Yeah, he
size of
plays with
a nickel.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. And he's
Brian May
another
played with a nickel.
genius. Yeah, yeah, he plays really
Yeah.
complex music. And
The other bands on here I agree with, Martyr and Neuroxis.
that's it, man. We fuck
Also, Strapping Young Lad, I guess, because they had Devin Townsend.
for sure.
But 3 Inches of Blood, I consider them a second tier band.
Well, you're going fast there. So Strapping Land, yeah, Devin Townsend, he sang on the Steve Vai album, Sex and Religion, which I have found out like 20 years later. I connected the dots,
What I'm
but
saying there is
yeah,
Devin Townsend
yeah.
is the reason that band was
Oh,
mainstream.
but
The rest,
and that's
anyone
fine.
else from that group, you probably be struggling to name them.
Yeah, no, but it's the band. Like I agree, like Strapping and like I don't know if I would put them A though. Maybe like you say, they're more like a B band. Yeah,
Well, there's the second tier of what I would consider
yeah.
kind of B. I call them B-listers.
Uh-huh.
Meaning, and for me, these are bands that locally everyone knows who they are, and people are always showing up to their shows.
Right, right,
You've
right.
made it in your local town. You can go play the local metal
Uh-huh.
dive, and you guarantee there'll be 300 to 500 people there. They've
Uh-huh.
also gone on tour across Canada and will be known in small areas and small select groups. People will have built a steady following with them. But as soon as they move out into the States and Europe and Eastern Asia and whatnot, then they
Mm.
start becoming less of a household name. That to me
Uh-huh.
would be the B list. And I honestly think bands like 3 Inches of Blood and Cataclysm would probably be on there. You go to let's say you go to a metal bar in Delhi and ask some kids and like, you guys heard of Cataclysm? And they probably
Yes.
have no idea.
Yes. Yeah, I know. This Cataclysm are much more known than you think. Also, it's because of how long they've been around. Simply, and I was gonna say, Michael, it's a label thing. You might come from Delhi, but if Prosthetic Records or Artisan Era signs you, you're gonna tour across the world.
I guess
It's like
now it's different, yeah, with the
yeah,
connectivity.
yeah.
But do you know who else
Yeah.
goes into that B list for me?
Go
You
ahead.
can start naming some more bands that I'm not sure if you'll be aware of, but Into Eternity,
No.
the Agonist.
Yes, the agonist. I gotta talk about him. Is the first band of Melissa. What's her name? Glutes. Melissa White Glutes.
Yeah,
Which
she's now in Arch
obviously
Enemy
not.
though, right? Yeah.
But I prefer. What she did. She fit much better in the agonist. The agonist, fucking
Oh yeah,
awesome, man. The
that was her
agonist is
band.
like. Yeah, but the musician, the riffs is like Black Dahlia Murder, man. It's like Black Dahlia Murder with female fronted.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of a sort of like controversy with her moving on. She was
Yeah.
approached. She was approached to replace Angela Gossow by Angela
Uh-huh.
Gossow,
Yep.
and she was like, "I'm not going to turn this down." It'd be like it's like we use the hockey analogy. It'd be like some third liner bench warmer guy being
Yeah.
offered a $10 million contract. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
not going to say no to that. And the guys from the Agonist, though, I think they were like, "No, if you're not going to be with just us, then we're going to move on and go find someone else." And they
Right.
made her make that decision. She would have probably been willing to continue to front both Arch Enemy and the Agonist if given the opportunity.
So I don't want to talk bad about is it Melissa or Alyssa? Alyssa.
Alyssa with
right?
an A. Yeah.
Alyssa. I don't want to talk bad too much about her, but she's kind of she's got to own it. She's kind of known for being a little bitchy. I mean,
The
she's
diva.
really yeah, and she went to really trash the band and like talking about abuse and stuff. It might have been true,
I
but
think
it
it's
just
because they
got
kicked her out when she said, "Look, I want to play
yeah
with Arch Enemy too." They were like, "Well, fine, fuck you. You're not
yeah
allowed to be in both." So
yeah.
I mean, I might trash the band in the same situation.
But it's a great man. Diagonist now, the new singer or the newest singer, also a female, also a girl, but it's no, it was something else with Alyssa. I loved Diagonist before she left, and Arch Enemy for me. I always liked Arch Enemy, but it doesn't matter who sings.
Yeah,
I don't really care who sings. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Whereas the agonist, she had some clean vocals. She had a lot more range. She was allowed to use more different styles of vocals. Whereas in Arch Enemy, it's almost all the typical growl. So anyway,
I have another band that I want to throw onto the B list, but it's funny because it almost seems like they're perennial B lists because they're a band that's been around since Annihilator's been around, and I'm talking. Let's see if you can guess. It's another band name begins with A.
yes,
You have a hammer and you smash the hammer onto A.
Anvil. Hey, these dudes have been around forever now.
Oh yeah, and to me, I think they're self-inflicted B-listers. I think they reached a certain level of fame and they were like, "We're good with this. We're good with this. Let's just keep it this way."
Yeah.
Heck, man, if I was in my late, like, I think they're early 60s, late 50s now, and I was still touring Canada, whatnot, with my band that I'd been in for 40 years, I would consider that a successful music career.
Where are they from?
I'm just looking up their wiki right now. I see that's so funny. This is why they're a B-lister. I don't think they have a Wikipedia.
They're on the Metal Archives here.
They'll probably be
for
on
sure.
on Metal Archives. Yeah. Oh no, wait, hold on.
Yes,
I found
they're
them.
from Toronto
Yeah.
since 81, dude. But they've been active as Lips since 78. I
Well,
was
yeah.
gonna say the 70s.
Well,
Dude.
yeah. They haven't
What
written
the
anything.
fuck?
I think the last album would be.
Well, we have it here. 2020, last year, man.
Oh, really? Jeez, they just
Yes,
continue to record and just
I
sit
I heard
underneath
about
that.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, they just love sitting underneath that radar. I think that honestly, perennial B-listers, they're happy with that.
so they're heavy power metal, which also called speed metal.
Hmm.
But they have a lot of albums. What the fuck, dude? They have like 20 full lengths, man.
Yikes! I was way off.
But it's good that you mentioned them. Thinking you, so you're doing the homework on that part.
Oh, I did. All I did all day when you told me what you wanted the topic to be, all I did all day was just like, gotta get well versed on my bands.
On Canadian classic, man.
Well, that gives me a good segue.
Uh,
That gives me a good segue. Unless you have any more perennial B-listers you want to discuss,
well,
because you're from Montreal, which is like the hub of Canadian metal.
yeah. So, but we kind of named them the ones who. So Neuraxis would be like a B band because and Martyr also
Not according
Martyr.
to Wikipedia, man. Wikipedia considered Neuraxis like a mainstream band for some
Well,
reason.
okay, that's what I mean. I don't disagree. Like A or B.
It's subjective.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. Martyr, the only one that you already mentioned it. So it's just that you read them too fast, but Martyr and
Martyr is how we pronounce it in English.
yeah, yes, in Quebec.
How do you say Mathieu?
Martyr.
Martyr. Lots
With
of
I spoke about him last week. He's the idol of David Davidson, obviously of Revocation. The fuck is his name now? I'm blanking. Anyway, yes. Okay, moving on. C. Okay, but how do you define C bands then? Because a lot of the newer bands are still new, right? But some of
C
them
bands.
but some of them been signed and do tour in the States.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's the one Edmonton band that's no longer around, and probably the good sort of like analog for what I consider a C band in Canada because they are no longer around, but they saw a certain level of success, and that's the Order of Chaos.
Great band, fucking awesome, man.
And
they're not around anymore.
Nope, they called it quits. They hung up the
What
guitars for good.
Ah man, it's
Probably
power metal. Yeah.
probably to do with the fact I think that they started hemorrhaging members. Like their drummer moved on, and a married man with a business decided he was in two bands. Another C band that I'm going to list called Quietus. He chose to stay with that band, and so they needed a new drummer. Their bass player moved on. They needed a new bass player. Then finally, I think their 10-year long guitar player, rhythm guitar player, moved on to his other band, and so the only remaining members were the singer and the shredder, the riff writer of the band. And they must have just probably made a complete decision together. It's like, hey, look, we had a good ride. These guys obviously want to move on to different things. Maybe it's time for us to put this to rest. And I respect that.
You might have some prime news there, because according to Archive, they are still active.
No, I'm friends with Amanda on Facebook, and she even posted this really somber, melancholy Facebook status, like a huge article about how much those boys mean to her and all that. And it was really touching speech actually. But no, they're done, because the shredder, the riff writer of the band, he runs a He's an educated man. I think he's a biochemist. He runs his own business, which is about, he's sent out into the woods to go and like study whenever excavations and construction companies come across substances they don't know what it is. He comes out and sets up his field lab and tests it for what it is, and that's obviously a business that's going to keep your focus away from your music. So
and the singer, doesn't she work at the Gentleman Club?
She does. She works at Shade. Yeah,
I never been there.
She's the, what's the word, maitre d'? She's like she's the boss of the ladies and whatnot, and she plays the music, the DJ.
Gentlemen, be generous for chocolate.
And she's kind of a bouncer, I guess, too. At the same time, you would not want to fuck with her. She's like she'll kick your ass.
Oh yeah, she looks like she would. Like, anyway, a great band, Order. And that reminds me of Unleash the Archers.
Well, Unleash the Archers are still around. And we can get into a discussion about them, but just real quick though, the Autocast, the reason they're my analog for C band is because of their career, because we can take a step back and look at their career from the fourth dimension and see it from start to finish and what they achieved. I think 12 years they were around together. Don't quote me on that. It's roughly a decade, and in that time they released 5 studio albums.
Yeah, 4.
So then they have an EP as well.
Yeah.
And they've toured 3 times internationally. Yeah. They toured Canada non-stop, they toured the United States non-stop, and then they finally got their big break and got a record label signing, I think, in 2010. And they were signed for 3 albums, and they would move on and become a worldwide band, an international band, which by your definition would make them mainstream. They went and toured Europe, they toured Eastern Asia.
Japan. Yep. Yeah, I saw the video in Japan. Great. So technically they were active since 2003, but they didn't start to record until 2009.
2003 was when they were 2003 was when they were formed, but they didn't.
Yeah.
I think they got signed in 2010. So
demos in 2006 and 2007, and their first full length in 2009. So yeah, exactly.
So that full length from 2009, that was what got them noticed, and then they got signed. Yeah. So there's your criteria. Being around for 10 years, they were signed. They've played festivals and toured the world. That, to me, it means you're a C-lister only if you never really truly made it into mainstream success. Like, they're not doing it anymore. Yeah. They didn't become a household name. Now you go to the bar in Delhi and ask them, hey, you heard of Autocast? Which is funny, actually, because people probably would know them, to be honest, because they were quite well received internationally. It's just a shame that everybody got tired and decided to move on, but sometimes the time is just ripe and it's just time to finish things, right?
For sure.
So that's why I think Unleash the Archer are in that category as well, because they've done everything the Order of Chaos have done except call it quits.
Right.
At the moment, I think there's only 2 original members in the band, and they're a husband-wife duo.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the singer and the drummer.
Oh, cool. Well, amazing band. For people who don't know...
they're self-signed as well. They have their own label.
Another power metal band. A lot of power metal bands in the West. But this is it. But it's interesting power metal. It's so well made, and it has some typical things of power metal, but it's not all that. It's they have some kind of even some depth a little bit, some passage where the one of the guitarists does like a back vocal growl.
Yep.
So yeah, they keep it interesting, and he shreds like a motherfucker. That guy.
Interesting claim to fame here, real quick. I have played on festival bills with both of those bands, Order of Chaos and Unleash the Archer.
Wow, that's cool.
Oh, and 3 Inches of Blood as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're famous. You're a D-lister.
No, because the funny thing is, the band that played that festival was my old band Boulder Fist. We kind of stood out like a sore thumb as far as styles, because there's all these bands like West of Hell and I think why do I keep saying Neuroxis? No, it is Neuroxis.
Neurosis.
No, Neuroxis. Who else? Quietus. There was quite a lot of big bands there, like what I would consider C and B listers and whatnot.
Yeah,
but we were this like little thrash metal band that had a basic basement demo,
right.
And we were really not that heavy at all in comparison. So we were buried on the Thursday night, the opening night. We headlined the opening night, and we only got the gig because the person who threw the event was a very, very close friend, the ex babysitter of our guitar player at the time. So we were very stood out like a sore thumb.
For sure.
I believe we had Order of Chaos played on the Friday night. Quietus played the Saturday night. 3 Inches of Blood, Neuroxis, and West of Hell all played on the Sunday night.
Big show.
Yeah, there was also another Calgary band which were pretty big at the time that you might have heard of called what were they called? Cryoxis. Let me look that up.
While you look that up, I think that now with the internet and with the markets growing in subgenres, it fucks up all your tier analysis.
Yeah,
I'm gonna explain why. Because like Archspire, okay, or Archspire, right?
they were at Metal Mountain as well. I forgot about them.
If you talk about metal in general, you might say they're a C band, right? But in Tech Death, they're pretty much like an A band.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's what I mean. And like my buddies from Quebec City, Necrotic Gore Beast, and metal, they're a C band. But in slam, they almost, they would be at the top of the slam festival. You know what I mean? Or they would be some of the best. So it's like, that's cool now. I think.
Oh, Cryosphere. Like, sorry, not
Cryosphere.
Cryosphere. That's the name of the band.
So now, basically, whatever subgenre you play of metal, if you can be interesting in your subgenre, you can be an A-lister in your subgenre, which I think is really cool.
Oh, hey, Josh, how's it going?
And different from how we saw bands before, right? Because there's so many more bands now.
Yeah. Either way, very, very, very interesting community that we have in the metal music scene in Canada. It's very, very connected internally, but very separated and isolated externally. But as kind of what you were saying there, now with the new modern day technologies we have, we're a little bit more connected with the outside world.
True, but that's what because obviously I'm close with the community still in Quebec, and I'm still learning more about the community out west, especially in the Edmonton community. And although there are bands that people know in the east and the west, it's almost like two countries of metal, because it's like, do you know this band from the west, or do you know this band from Quebec? It's like completely another region.
I have a question for you then. So out here in the west, as you know, other than the Vancouver area, it's probably the most isolated it is out in the prairies. And then you've got mountains between the prairies and Vancouver. That's going to be extremely different in my mind anyway to what it would be like in Ontario and Quebec. Is it like in Ontario and Quebec, I imagine it would probably be more like it is on the East Coast in general. So more like the New York region, the New Jersey region, Connecticut and Maryland and all that.
Well, I would say before. Well, Quebec's an interesting story, because at the beginning, the first big bands to make it were in this place called Rimouski, which is like 10-hour drive north of Quebec, and some bands like Entombed and fucking like the biggest death metal bands played in Rimouski. It's like if I'd say to you that that the scene was in I don't know, Medicine Hat, or I don't know, whatever. But at first it started there, but that was like an anomaly. After that, like you said, like the Montreal, Quebec region was like sort of like the New York scene, or it's like kind of close. But now with internet and the communities, the whole Quebec province is pretty united, meaning that bands from the north of Quebec or anywhere in Quebec will do shows together, and they will travel,
Yeah.
and yeah.
So
Yeah.
the best way I can explain how it works in Alberta would be from an anecdote, I guess, from a friend of mine and Trevor's. Our friend Dave, he grew up in the Seba Beach region, which is way out in the country. And him and his friend, if I recall from his, this is the anecdote, is they were the only metalheads in town. And everyone else in town was like, other than their parents, everyone else was seniors. All these old people, 50 plus. And so the first thing they did when they were able to, when they were old enough to get up, pack the bags, and move on out, is move to the city.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what I would imagine happens as well in most places in Alberta, because we have a Fort McMurray in well, he's not from Fort McMurray, but he lived in Fort McMurray for a long time, and he could attest to this. But like, there's no metal bands up there. I even remember our drummer former drummer from our old drummer Phil. He's from up there as well, and he came here to Edmonton to meet more musicians.
I can name one big one from Fort Mac. It's probably an anomaly, but just because I heard I saw in the news, like Arrival of Autumn. They played a tour with In Flames, or they were gonna play a tour with In Flames. I don't know if it's free or
I'm not sure
before or after COVID, but yeah. Like, I think that was pretty big news, Obviously, if In Flames come in the West,
Josh Iron Blooded 89 in the chat just pointed out that his band. Speaking of which, he's got news that he must have got accepted into this band. He says the guitarist from this group is also from Fort McMurray, and here we are in it, like in the city. So
Trevor's from Fort McMurray also.
Well, no, that's what I was saying. He's not from Fort McMurray. He lived there, but he's not from there.
Okay.
So that's basically Alberta, though, in a nutshell. More often than not, people who grow up in the country, if they're metalheads or into metal music or they're musicians of any kind, they're gonna get to the city at first notice. Even like people from Red Deer.
Yeah, it's like our buddies from Chimera. Remember the young dudes who played with us?
Lac La Biche, right?
Lac La Biche, see. And now I think they've been in Montreal for like a few months or almost a year.
Mm-hmm.
I think, so no, for sure. But I could imagine, like, when I was speaking with them, and I could imagine like they were the only people who knew what death metal was, and like a bit more or less,
They could, because they didn't have a bass player or anything, did they? It was just the three of them.
Yeah, two of them. But they got the singer after. Yeah.
But he was from Edmonton, wasn't he?
Yes. Exactly. Well, before I joined Skullsplitter, I was speaking with them, but I just found their story very interesting. Like, and also
that's Alberta. That's rural Alberta. That's the metal scene in rural Alberta right there.
But I found it super interesting that kids like 16, 17, they were at the time choosing to mix elements of death metal and kind of like some post elements, and coming from a place like Lac La Biche, it's like, what the fuck, like. And this kind of anecdotes also make me want to search for more bands like this with interesting stories, what I mean? And and obviously now we name the big names, but now I could name you 100 Canadian bands just because I discovered in the last 3 years. Really, before that I couldn't tell you, but now I do, especially also with this show, I do a point of looking for them, and I keep finding amazing Canadian.
Do you know what's an interesting anomaly? So I'm on Encyclopedia Metallum, right? And I'm looking at Canadian bands by name, alphabetical order. There's nothing from Manitoba.
Where are you looking?
I'm on Canadian bands listed by title.
Go on archives. I'm sure
that's what I'm on. All Canadian bands.
No, Metal Archives.
So I'm on metalarchives.com, Encyclopedia Metallum, right?
Okay.
And I can't find Manitoba bands. Yeah.
What the fuck?
Look, here we go. British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec.
I know
Manitoba.
one.
Here we go. Krull.
There's another one.
Krull from Winnipeg, Manitoba. That's
Krull.
Yeah.
There's a good tech debt one there.
Oh,
2019.
Iron Blooded 89 there says Comeback Kid is from Manitoba.
Oh, I didn't know that. It's kind of a big name, and even in Quebec.
There's a band called
people-
Labyrinth. There's a band called Labyrinth that are no longer together. They're from Manitoba. Man, I'm finding more Red Deer bands. I find more Red Deer bands than I do Manitoba bands. It's crazy.
Wait. You gotta find these guys.
I'm not saying there isn't any, but it's just very difficult to find. See, I went to the next page. The first one there is Damascus, Winnipeg, Manitoba. But there's another interesting fact. They're all from Winnipeg. There's nothing else out there.
But there's one I gotta find because I really like it.
There's a lot of Calgary and Edmonton bands. That's crazy. A lot of Quebec bands.
Okay, there's a million in Winnipeg, but I don't know if they're famous. Like what kind of status they have.
Hey, look, Whitehorse. Yo, there's a band in Whitehorse, Yukon, who are currently active called Decaying Frost, black death metal.
Hey man, who's this dude writing in the chat? I will be looking on all the bands you showed me. I want to showcase bands from all the provinces, and some provinces I have.
This is mine and Trevor's good friend Josh.
Oh, cool. Well,
he's a vocalist and a
thanks,
guitar player
Josh.
as well.
I'll look that up. Definitely, I will feature some bands of other provinces like this, man. What's that?
I think though it's to be expected that the least amount of bands you're going to find are probably from Manitoba, just because of it being one of the least populous provinces. Just like you won't find very many from the territories as well. It's interesting you find a lot. You find a lot from Newfoundland and a lot from Prince Edward Island, which is weird.
There's Vagina Witchcraft in Winnipeg.
Vagina Witchcraft.
I know they're in the.
Are they a black metal band?
Yes, they're in the charts. They're like a sludge thing.
Ew.
Yeah, they're in the
metal
Canadian metal charts. I've seen their name float around. And of course, 66 Samus is from. Not from, but he lives in Winnipeg now, right?
Yeah.
Man. Okay. Obviously, I've ordered by Winnipeg and on the Metal Archives. There's a lot. Oh, Anomalism. That's a great death metal band from Manitoba. I gotta contact them.
Comeback Kid are a hardcore punk band. That's why they're not showing up there.
yeah. Right. Okay, it's an EP. Hey man, Anomalism. I'm gonna contact these dudes. I really love that EP. I remember.
We should just contact every active band.
Live content.
Yeah. We should just contact every active band and just there we go. All our episodes from now until forever.
Pretty much.
That's pretty much me wrapping up on the conversation, man. What do you got any more final thoughts? Anything you wanna just go into one last time?
I just wanted to mention two albums that you have to listen to this week.
Yep.
One is from a band called Pupil Slicer. They're from London. They put out their first LP called Mirrors. It's usually a style that I don't really listen to, but it's an amazing album. It's like a mathcore, chaotic hardcore kind of thing. You know Dillinger Escape Plan?
Yeah. Okay,
so like that. So I that was an anomaly for me. I never really listened to that style, but I found they had a certain thing. But that album from Pupil Slicer, it's fucking crazy. They're a power trio, female fronted, and mathcore, and it was some glitches. Sometimes you think your earphones are fucked up, but no, it's in the song. Amazing album. It's very.
Iron Blooded 89 is a fan.
Yeah, it's really it's crazy. It's a crazy fucking
and they're
project.
From London, Ontario.
Yeah, no, London, UK, bro.
Oh,
London.
Wait,
yeah.
I thought we were only showcasing Canadian bands.
No. This is my listens of.
These are just to recommend. Okay.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And so Pupil Slicer. Yeah, Dillinger Escape Plan. Exactly. Yeah, I was a kind of a big Dillinger Escape Plan fan, like that album, Miss Machine. Pupil Slicer. I want you to listen to it. It's out of your comfort zone. Out of my usual caveman riffs, death metal zone, but it's very interesting. And the other one, which also you will love, is called Cryptosis. They're from the Netherlands. They also put their first LP out called Bionic Swarm. This one is like it's thrash, but really to the extreme. It's like a prog. It's like a tech thrash. You know, it's so fast. It's so fast.
What are they called? Sorry, cryptopsis.
Cryptosis.
Cryptosis. Isn't that funny? And how close that is to cryptopsy?
Yes. I always fucked up when I write the man name.
That's what I thought. I thought you said. I thought you said cryptopsis. Yeah. I was like, what?
Yeah. Cryptosis. They actually remind me of one band in Edmonton, man, that plays some kind of a tech trash. Oh, fuck. I should have written the name down. But yeah, you gotta look that up there on Century. Are you
talking about Tessitura?
No, although that could also be in that vein. Shit. Now I hate myself. Josh, what's the band I'm talking about? I can't think of it.
Oh, well, he just made something that's going to cheer you up big time there. He says, I'm proud of him because he wrote the darkest song he ever wrote. They should be lyrics for a death metal band. Well, tell your guys to write some guitar riffs for death metal then. Oh, we got a hello from John Connor 0924. Hello, John Connor. How are you?
Nice. We got some activity.
Yeah. And that's it. Those are your two recommendations.
Yeah, Pupil Slicer. Put that in the car. And Cryptosis, the album Bionic Swarm. You're gonna dig both. You probably Cryptosis. I know you're gonna like. Pupil Slicer. Not sure, but it's very interesting. It's bucked up.
Pupil Slicer is the one from London.
Yeah.
And
Cryptosis are from the Netherlands.
I'm pretty sure I will go give it a try, but I'm not sure. I'm already not a fan of that name because of all the things that don't bug me, and I'm not very squeamish. I don't care about graphic art or anything like that, but one thing that bugs me is things with the eye. I can't wear contacts, I can't put eye drops in or anything like that.
Pupil Slicer.
Oh god, just talking about it just makes me want to cringe. We have do you like Papaya Peluda?
I do not know them. Sounds like a very interesting band. That's a joke, right? That's like a dirty sex thing or something.
Oh, brilliant. What a nice way to end this. This is a good job.
Yeah, I'm not gonna Google that.
No, don't.
Yeah.
All right, so that's pretty much me done. That's pretty much you done. That was a good conversation.
Yeah, I can tell it.
We actually ended up talking.
Hours.
Yeah, we talked longer on this topic than we have on anything to date. So really? Yeah.
We just scratched the surface. We barely named any Canadian bands. Well, no, but that was the point. We didn't want to. You know what? The bands we showcase are upcoming bands usually with, new releases. I wanted to talk about some, established Canadian bands. I think we did a decent job there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else to add?
Next week, Cannibal Corpse. We'll review the fucking album. It's out on Friday. So on Friday morning, you listen to that until next Monday.
Well, we'll be listening to it all weekend so that we're prepared.
Yes, sir. So come join us next Monday for Cannibal Corpse.
All right. Yep. As for the channel, I will be streaming some Red Dead 2 later on. But until then, stay metal, everybody.